In this session, we are going to understand from the Basel's standpoint, what is this risk data aggregation all about, and what are the various important principles of when I say the risk data aggregation process or risk reporting process is very effective in any organization or a bank. So before we actually get into the effectiveness of the processes and all, first trying to understand the risk data aggregation mechanism. So as the word itself is saying, okay, first I need to understand what is this risk data and how do I aggregate it. So basically define what is risk data, then gather or collect the risk data from various sources, do some calculations and basically called as the processing aspect of it, and this entire risk data aggregation process should help any entity, whether it's a bank or any financial institution, to measure its risk appetite, risk tolerance levels. This needs to be the entire objective of any good risk data aggregation kind of a process. So it can start right from understanding what data need to be collected and from what sources it needs to be collected, how should it be merged, and what kind of data sets need to be created out of that. So whatever the processing that happens, it should result in the reports, and the reports need to be more and more beneficial to understand and evaluate the risk taking levels of the bank. That is what is the typical objective of risk data aggregation process. Now, generally it has been perceived that any good risk data aggregation process, the more and more we are able to collect the data, collect more relevant data, it can help in anticipating the problems quite earlier because we are seeing the data. So once we have a proper collection and processing mechanism, the problem will be known much before it has really occurred, because it will help the managers or whosoever is evaluating to understand the big picture, because an aggregation is happening across all departments, all risks, etc. So big picture of the overall risk can be viewed in in a quick time span, so the action item can be implemented very much on time. And if at all there is any kind of a deviation or probably any kind of problem that is sensed, it can help to come back to normal, back to good financial status within no time, because before the big damage has occurred, the problem got identified. So bouncing back to the original position may not be a big issue at all. So bank can save few millions or billions of dollars because of proper risk data aggregation processes, and it can help in resolving problems at a quick speed, especially even when there is a failure on the part of the bank, even during extreme stressed conditions also, probably coming back and resolving the problems become more and more comfortable. So overall the efficiency of the bank and the overall financial system can very much go up, means probably probability of the defaults and the losses actually could come down. So overall profitability can go up. But yes, not just having data, the way you collect it, the reasonableness of the data collection process, the appropriateness of the data collection and processing, all these things need to have a proper framework in place which can really help the banks and financial institutions derive valuable information and go with more and more profitable kind of operations. This is one of the major reasons, and that is where we talk about coming up with a key set of principles. Right, we talk about a big set of principles which are key to this data aggregation kind of process. The first and foremost is looking from the dimension of governance. So what are the governance related probably principles, or sometimes I call it as good practices, best practices with respect to governance issues with related to the data. The main thing from the governance dimension, what it says is the data aggregation major dimension is this: the aggregation of the data, the collection process of the data should be a part of the overall risk management framework of the bank. It's not a separate function, or it should not be done something outside the risk management process. It is not, it has to be treated as a part of the overall risk management process itself. Mean just like any other activity of the risk management, there should be adequate resources, adequate budgets, all these things to be dedicated, and even the senior management approvals and senior management interest should be there towards the data aggregation process. So even the whole practices require a very good documentation. How is the data collected, from what sources, what is the perspective of the data aggregation. The entire practices related to the data aggregation needs to be well documented. There should be proper information technology architecture in place which can help easy inputting of the data and easy retrieval of the data. So the whole thing, the validation processes for the data and all needs to be properly in place. So the documentation for the same has to be really considered, and the culture has to be promoted within the organization, irrespective of whatever is the structure of the bank. So the bank and its operations, whatever is the mechanism, this structure should not, this governance structure should not be impacting the operations of the bank to any extent. And from a senior management layer, there should be heavy amount of support, or probably the prioritization with respect to the data aggregation aspects, that needs to be very much a kind of help that needs to come from senior management. So overall, the governance with respect to the data aggregation is one of the important principles as a part of the data aggregation process. So the governance forms one of the important principle. Then the second dimension that is looked at is the data related architecture, right? Data related architecture and infrastructure, IT systems. How is the data aggregated so that it can be retrieved quite comfortably? So the governance part is one, the architecture part is one. So whatever is the bank's planning process, based on the plan of the bank, the data collection, the data architecture needs to be designed, and thoroughly the impact analysis for the same need to be done. And okay, what are the different kinds of data, right from different departments of the bank? What kind of data needs to be collected from what kind of department, and what is the frequency of the data collection process? What is the kind of data models, the technology wise, what are the data models that need to be used? what are the kind of databases, the speed, performance, accuracy, what are these kind of things that need to be used, right? And what are the naming conventions associated with the various tables and databases, on what frequency they are updated, how they are updated. So identifying the resources who are responsible for collection, updation, writing the queries, retrieval, the ownership of the data, what kind of data is owned by whom, all this have to be fully in place as a part of the data aggregation process. Then we are talking about a few more dimensions from the capabilities with respect to the strong data aggregation process. We are looking at from the dimensions of accuracy and integrity of the data. It should not happen that different data at different points will give us different conclusions. Probably talking about from wherever the sources the data is collected, it should be more and more accurate. So probably here it is saying that the loss is 20,000 bucks, and in some other database for the same amount of loss it's showing 2 million. These kind of inconsistencies should not be there in the data, and there should be proper reconciliation process, identifying the kind of gaps at each and every step, and probably go more for authorized sources of data rather than trying to update the data that comes from wherever, whatever kind of a location, and identify who will have the access to the data, who are the people who will input the data into the databases, what is the kind of qualification that is associated with the database engineers, what is the kind of consistency within the bank with respect to the data and across the banks, is the definitions or the glossary, right? When we use a word relating to a particular data risk, when I say probably the probability of default, is it understood the same way by all databases, by all departments? So probably having a metadata or a definitions properly in place, and the typically the monitoring process, making sure that the data is more and more accurate, and the integrity of the data. Probably if there is one data item at X location, if I want to trace this X and find out the breakup of X, so the summation of the breakup should be the same as the total which has been put at other places, checking out for the duplicacy of the records. All these things have to be improved. Then on the other dimension, I am looking at the completeness of the data. So there should not be any kind of incomplete items, or across all the risk types. Am I collecting the data? Have I omitted some kind of risk types? Or for all the lines of business, did I collect the data? For all the departments, am I collecting the data? Did I omit any of those things? For all the various asset types, is the data collected? So that's a huge area to work on, making sure that I am not omitting any of the data. That is what is getting getting as a part of the completeness process. On balance sheet, off balance sheet, all kinds of risks, are they getting computed and entered into the database? Are they getting processed? And so are the senior managers heavily involved in the review process, as well as in the assessment and monitoring of these things? So that is one more dimension that will ensure the effectiveness of the risk data aggregation process within the organization. Then the one more dimension which is given as a key principle for effectiveness is the timeliness of the data. Whatever the reports that are getting generated, whatever the aggregation that is happening, along with the accuracy, along with the completeness, even the timeliness also is very much important, because generally the bank has to bank has to act on the results immediately. So if the calculations give me the results probably 10 days after the data is inputted, then probably by that time the damage would have already occurred. So having a proper performing system, proper functioning models, proper calculation mechanisms, ensuring the speed as well as accuracy is very much necessary for bringing the effectiveness, because whatever even if the data is coming from multiple systems, how quickly the data is aggregated, how well the positions are computed, how quickly the positions of each of the counterparties are calculated, and so the timing is very much critical. The timeliness of the reports is very much critical. So that's one more dimension we are talking of. And then we are also talking about the adaptability. Primarily talking about even if there are some ad hoc requests that come from the management in terms of some kind of reports to be generated, the system should have the once the data is aggregated, even some ad hoc kind of queries need to be addressed in a quite quick and accurate kind of a manner. So is the system flexible enough, is the system scalable enough, is the system adaptive enough to generate those kind of customizable kind of reports. Any kind of dashboards need to be presented, any kind of quick analysis need to be done, which is not done on a routine basis. Some kind of ad hoc kind of reports and all, if they need to be brought out also. Is the system sufficient enough for bringing out those kind of mechanisms? That is the dimension that we are talking about from an adaptability perspective. Similarly, few more principles that are there, they target reporting perspective. From a reporting dimension, we are talking about accuracy of the reports. Again, the same. The error should be as minimum as possible. They should be comprehensive, completeness. Again, they should not leave blanks, or probably they should not pose another question, or they should not they should not talk about irrelevant and unnecessary things. They should be crisp, they should be comprehensive, they should be clear, whether it is in a graphical form or in a tabular form or whatever it is. There should be a lot of clarity. Usefulness, they should be very much helpful to the management to make their decisions quite comfortably, right? All these things are something which are very much essential for any kind of a report that we are generating. Forget about the risk report. Any report we generate as a part of our understanding process, it should be accurate, it should be useful for someone. It should not go for pages and pages without having any kind of relevant information. It should be crisp, clear, completely relevant to the requirement, and appropriately frequent. Very good word. Means, okay, depending on the frequency of publishing. Like some reports need to be published on a daily basis, some on a weekly basis, some on a monthly basis. So depending on the requirement of the party who is going to receive the reports, the reporting system should have the capability to generate the reports at that level of frequency. And if at all, even an ad hoc report has to be produced at the request of senior management or board of directors or any one of them, the system should have the capability and flexibility to generate those kind of things. And even the transfer mechanism of the reports to the relevant parties. Only those parties who have the proper access rights only they should be able to view the report. So, and only that portion of the report for which they have the access, and for other parties there should be a lot of confidentiality that has to be maintained as a part of the report. So what we typically expect as a part of good data reporting requirement is all these things, right from the governance to architecture to accuracy, integrity, comprehensiveness, completeness, and coming to the timeliness, the flexibility and the adaptability, coming to the report's accuracy, usefulness, frequency, all these things have to be working together, not in isolation. That is what will generate effective data aggregation process, which will really help any kind of an organization to derive useful information which can increase the profitability by reducing the risks to a large extent. So this was for this reason Basel has come out with this kind of an article from an operating risk mitigation dimension. If this kind of data aggregation process and the data reporting process is very much up to mark, the organizations can very much reduce their risk drastically and in turn improve their profitability positions, right? So if you have any further queries regarding the same, you can very well get back to me by giving me a call on the number that I have provided below, or you can send in an email at vamsidhar@pacegurus.com. Thanks a lot for listening to this session. Thank you very much.